Hey guys, Mr. Hanley here, and our video been studying the philosophy of different arguments for God. I figured it would, instead of having to listen to me drone on and be boring, along with listening to me drone on and be boring, we can watch a little cartoon, and I'll kind of stop it as we go, and we'll discuss it, and you will answer questions about it afterward. And so we are going to watch a video on the cosmological argument today. So now we did the transcendental argument, the moral argument, different things like that. We're going to do the cosmological argument today. I was going to do the ontological one, but we'll do that next week. This is the cosmological argument today. Let's watch. A boy riding on a balloon.
Does God exist? Or is the material universe all that is, or ever was, or ever will be?
So far you're probably noticing a little bit of similarity to the transcendental argument. A lot of these have some passing similarities. Like I mentioned, the transcendental argument was a little similar to the moral argument. So this talks about the material universe a little bit, but it is different than, it's going to seem a little bit familiar because it deals with the law of causation, which we talked about earlier in the year. So let's keep going.
One approach to answering this question is the cosmological argument. It goes like this. Whatever begins to exist has a cause. The universe began to exist. Therefore, the universe has a cause. Is the first premise true? Let's consider.
All right, so remember I had talked to you guys about the Socratic method. This is the Socratic method. You have one point, a second point, and a third point. And in order for the Socratic method to work, all 3 points have to be valid. And you have to start with a true statement. Like if I said something, remember I was giving the example that, Mr. Hanley is the greatest basketball, I don't remember what exactly my argument was, but I am the greatest basketball player in the world. LeBron James is also a basketball player, therefore I can beat LeBron James at basketball, something like that. And the second premise was, it's actually a valid argument, it's just not true. There's a difference between truth and being valid. Valid is like it logically fits. Like I'm the best basketball player in the world. LeBron James is a basketball player, so therefore I can beat LeBron James at basketball. It logically makes sense, the order. It wouldn't be like an invalid argument that doesn't make sense is I am the best basketball player in the world. Mookie Betts is a baseball player, therefore I can eat more chicken wings than Mookie Betts or something like that. It doesn't make any sense at all because they don't have anything to do with one another. This is that was a valid argument that I am the best basketball player in the world. LeBron James is a basketball player, therefore I can beat LeBron James. It's valid, but it's not true because the very first premise, the very first part, is a false statement. I am not the best basketball player in the world, believe it or not. And so therefore defeat the rest of it. So when you look at arguments using the Socratic method, you need to look at and validate and evaluate each of the things. So whatever begins to exist has a cause. You have to evaluate that statement. Does that make sense that if something begins, it has a cause? Well, yeah.
Consider. Believing that something can pop into existence without a cause is more of a stretch than believing in magic.
Okay, so that's essentially what you would believe. If you believe something can just pop into existence without anything causing it, you just literally believe in magic.
At least with magic, you've got a hat and a magician. And if something can come into being from nothing, then why don't we see this happening all the time? No, everyday experience and scientific evidence confirm our first premise.
So nothing in science would ever tell you that things can pop into or things can happen without a cause. It's called the law of causation. Nobody would ever say anything can happen, unless you're talking about, the beginnings of life where they try to kind of figure things out like that and stretch. In everyday life, they would never say that something can happen without a cause.
If something begins to exist, it must have a cause. But what about our second premise?
Okay, so that's it. They're evaluating the second premise. The universe, did the universe begin? So the first premise, you wouldn't have very many people argue that if something begins to exist, something starts to exist that had something that caused it to start to exist, you wouldn't have very many people arguing with that. This is the one that they might start to argue with. And this for a long time, you guys remember, scientists all believed that the universe was eternal. For a very long time, you were scoffed at if you believed for a while that the universe had a beginning. Because to scientists for many, many, many years, they said, well, there is no beginning. If the universe had a beginning, then obviously God would exist. They believed this for a long time.
The universe begin, or has it always existed? Atheists have typically said that the universe has been here forever. The universe is just there, and that's all. First, let's consider the second law of thermodynamics.
This the one word for the second law of thermodynamics is entropy. So basically, the second law of thermodynamics says everything tends towards disorder. Okay, as time goes on, nothing gets better and better and better. Look at your room. While you're in quarantine and locked up in your house, I'm sure your house hasn't gotten neater and neater. Your room hasn't gotten neater and neater and neater. It's probably gotten messier, messier, messier. And if it has gotten neater, it's only because you added energy to it. You cleaned it, right? The only way something will get cleaner and cleaner and cleaner is when you add energy and intelligence to something. If you just leave it and just, don't pick things up, it just gets dirtier and dirtier and dirtier. That's entropy, the second law of thermodynamics, but applied to energy and equilibrium and everything.
It tells us the universe is slowly running out of usable energy. And that's the point. If the universe had been here forever, it would have run out of usable energy by now.
Now you might say, let's make up a number. Let's say there was 1 million joules in the universe, and we would say, well, if the universe has been here by forever, then it would have used up that 1 million joules. Don't think that you could be like create a bigger number. All right, fine. Then there was 1 billion joules of energy. So therefore, it could have been here forever. Nope. Forever, you'd use up 1 billion joules. All right, 10 billion joules. Nope. It's forever. You'd use up 10 billion. 100 quadrillion joules. No, it's forever. Basically, if you give any number, then the energy would have been used up. Okay? The only way you would have an eternal universe that has not existed forever and still have energy in the universe is if the energy was infinite as well. However, because of the second law of thermodynamics that nobody argues with, that means we're running out of energy, usable energy, which means we had a certain amount and it's getting less and less. It's not infinite. If you're getting less and less of something, if you have cookies in a cookie jar and they're going down, they're not infinite cookies, okay? Oh, I'm running out of time here.
The second law points us to a universe that has a definite beginning. This is further confirmed by a series of remarkable scientific discoveries. In 1915, Albert Einstein presented his general theory of relativity. This allowed us, for the first time, to talk meaningfully about the past history of the universe. Next, Alexander Friedmann and George Lemaitre, each working with Einstein's equations, predicted that the universe is expanding. Then in 1929, Edwin Hubble measured the red shift in light from distant galaxies. This empirical evidence confirmed not only that the universe is expanding, but that it sprang into being from a single point in the finite past. It was a monumental discovery, almost beyond comprehension.
So what that single point where everything expanded from is called the singularity, and that's where some people came up with the idea of the Big Bang Theory, which we don't necessarily believe in, but it was interesting because the Big Bang Theory, I've mentioned this before, the Big Bang Theory at first was like, it rocked the world of everybody, and they said, wow, all these people that believe in the Big Bang Theory, they're now believers in God, because they were consistent back then in the 1930s, including Albert Einstein. He died considering himself religiously a deist, saying he believed in God. He wouldn't go necessarily any farther than that, but he said, well, there has to be a God, because he said the universe had a beginning, and if the universe had a beginning, obviously something began it. You can't have a beginning of the universe. So all these guys, all the Big Bang Theory guys, were actually believers in God. Once they clung to Big Bang Theory, then they said there has to be a God out there, unlike the inconsistent scientists today.
However, not everyone is fond of a finite universe. So it wasn't long before alternative models popped into existence, but one by one, these models failed to stand the test of time. More recently, three leading cosmologists, Arvind Borde, Alan Guth, and Alexander Vilenkin, proved that any universe which has on average been expanding throughout its history cannot be eternal in the past, but must have an absolute beginning.
So any universe that's expanding has to have at one point started expanding, right? And it has to have a beginning. These guys recently proved that there has to be a beginning to the universe.
This even applies to the multiverse, if there is such a thing.
All right, so the multiverse, really quickly, because I only have 4 minutes left of this video that I can screenshot. The multiverse, basically, some people say, which is not true, some people say there are many, many universes out there with many, many U's, and there are different multiverses expanding and contracting into one another, kind of like it's similarly related to the Big Bounce, when we talked about the Big Bounce, that it expanded and contracted over like trillions and trillions and trillions of years, and we're just in one of these expansions, and eventually it's going to contract back into a single point again when this universe is done. It even applies to the multiverse. If you believed in that argument that there is a multiverse out there, many universes and many U's, this beginning would still have to happen, right? And there would have to be somebody that caused the beginning.
This means that scientists can no longer hide behind a past eternal universe. There is no escape. They have to face the problem of a cosmic beginning. Any adequate model must have a beginning, just like the standard model. It's quite plausible then that both premises of the argument are true. This means that the conclusion is also true.
So if something begins to exist, it has to have something that caused it to exist. The universe did begin to exist, so therefore something has to have caused the universe to exist.
The universe has a cause. And since the universe can't cause itself, its cause must be beyond the space-time universe.
Nothing can cause itself. Nothing can cause something to happen to itself, right? Meaning, like an inanimate object, like a soccer ball, can't just move itself, right? It has to be something beyond itself has to cause it to be moved. But especially things that are created. Created things can't just create themselves.
It must be spaceless, timeless, immaterial, uncaused, and unimaginably powerful.
So the reason for these has to be spaceless, timeless, and immaterial, because time, space, and material were created. You know, the very first chapter of the Bible, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth, right? In the beginning, that's the creation of time. God created the heavens, that's space, and the earth, that's material. So those three things were created in Genesis 1:1. So the person who created them has to be beyond them, right? Uncaused, so he can't be caused, because if God was caused, this thing that was caused, then that means that there is something that caused that to exist, and obviously powerful has to be able to do it.
Much like God.
Okay, so all these things we talk about, whatever thing caused the beginning of the universe, we're calling that God. Okay, remember, these arguments for God do not get into whether or not you should believe in Jesus, whether or not it's this God or a different God. We just want to get somebody from the point of atheism to believing in a God. And then after that, you can convince them to believe in your God, the God of the Bible, which obviously we believe is the true God. But at this point, we're just trying to get them from some believing no God exists to believing in a God exists.
The cosmological argument shows that, in fact, it is quite reasonable to believe that God does exist.
All right, that's it. So, William Lane Craig, he's a pretty good guy. In conclusion, I'm gonna give you some homework on this. You can watch the video again. You can see it's called the Kalam Cosmological Argument, William Lane Craig. Reasonable Faith, Dr. Craig, that's William Lane Craig. I'm gonna give you some homework on this, and hopefully you guys are remembering all these arguments. See you later.